Let's talk quickly in concept about the data-driven visual composition of data-bound controls, and then we'll see how it really works in a demo. So mainly what I'm focusing on here are content controls and items controls. And these controls, when you're using data binding, can dynamically generate child elements. They do it based on the data-bound objects that they're pointed to. Generally, it's going to be based on data templates, but in the case of items controls, the derived types such as listbox and combobox have other properties that can decide what to render just based on the data itself. When you're working with a content control, it's going to generate a content presenter. And the content presenter is going to become the container for the data-driven content, whatever you're setting as the content property on the content control through data binding. Content presenter is also going to show up in a lot of other controls. A window has a root content presenter it uses to show the child area. User controls derive from content control. Tab controls contain multiple content controls. Data grid cells and so on. They all use content presenters to render out their data-driven content. And ultimately, the data context is going to be set on this element as the content object that's being rendered out. And that's going to flow down the visual tree into something like a data template that's being rendered as the content. When you're working with items controls, it's going to be an items presenter as opposed to a content presenter. Similar concept, it's the single root container for each of the items rendered out by that items control. And it is going to be a specific type based on the control that's actually rendering. So there's a combo box item type, list box item type, tab item, and so on. When it goes and renders out one of those items, generally somewhere down the chain of that item, there's going to be a content presenter because that item represents a single piece of content. And the way a single piece of content gets rendered out in a data-bound scenario is through a content presenter. And just like with the content presenter inside a content control, the data context on each item container, specifically combo box item, list box item, and so on, is going to be set to the data context, is going to be set to the individual data object that's being rendered out within that item's control. So that's a lot of words and lofty concepts. Let's drill into a demo that will make this more concrete by digging into the visual tree and seeing what's going on when data binding is happening.